Hearing what Nali said, the teenagers from ordinary families cheered up, their eyes shining. The great Emo was an example to all who sought power, and the hurtful words that Shinshue had said before had almost made them feel hopeless. Well, in the hundreds of years that Svetozer has existed, only Lord Emo has managed to reach such a high position thanks to his unique gift. After a moment's hesitation, Shinshue tried to change the subject. But you said that this is basically impossible. Why are you contradicting yourself? Mr. Emo is a great example, proving that it doesn't matter if you are noble or not. Your abilities are limitless and all obstacles are surmountable, as long as you are willing to improve. Shinshue almost burst with anger. This insolent man had caught her in the act and wasn't going to give in. Absolutely no concept of respect for elders. He openly dared to contradict her in front of the whole class. Shinshue looked at Nali with a look full of icy contempt. Well, this young clever boy is going to be in big trouble for the foreseeable future. Du Jia's eyes shone with appreciation. He was stunned to the core that a noble boy would risk crossing the teacher by defending commoners. With all his unsophisticated and childlike heart, Du Jia had already accepted Nali as his friend. Shinshue grinned. Well, smart guy, do you think that if you try hard, you can change the harsh reality? You mentioned Mr. Emo, fine. But how many have failed? Why don't you tell me at the same time how difficult it is to become a demon caster at all, even at the lowest rank? And you're supposed to be of noble birth, but you're not taught when to hold your tongue and when not to speak. Let me see where you stand. Shinshue quickly ran her eyes over the cadet data scroll and muttered with a mocking chuckle. What have we got there? Ah, yes. Red Soul Vessel, Spiritual Power Flow 5, Power 21. With a talent like that, all you'll ever be able to do in a lifetime is a bronze-ranked warrior. Becoming a demon spellcaster is a pipe dream for you. You're less than some of the commoners. There's a reason you made such a big deal about it, to cover up your own worthlessness, that's all. The level of the soul vessel depended on the color. There were 7 colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. The red soul vessel was the worst. A person of average ability had orange or yellow. Someone who had a green or blue soul vessel could be considered a genius. Blue or purple were the stuff of legend. Hearing what Shinshue said, many of the commoners felt sympathy for Nali. Wow, noble and 0 ability. There's no point in even dreaming of any achievements. Yi Ziyun sighed. Not Li, of course, a bully, but how not to feel sorry for him, with such abilities? Shin Yu, on the other hand, grimaced contemptuously. How could he consider this lowlife a threat to himself? Such a mediocrity only deserved to suffer a miserable existence among the city trash, while he himself, Shin Yu, was a direct heir of the great sacred family, one of the 3 basic families of Lightstar. How could Nali compare to him in any way? Shinshue, meanwhile, continued her vicious taunts. With such data, insignificant even for a rundown clan like yours, you probably thought you'd be rude to draw any attention to yourself? The teacher's words brought Nali back in time. Yes, it was just as she described. He had barely reached 3 bronze stars before Lightstar's fall and was unlikely to ever rise higher. He was looked upon as nothing, both at school and in his family. The memories of that tore at his heart even now. Yes, in a previous life, of course, Nali would not have dared to contradict his teacher and would have kept his mouth shut in response to criticism. But now he knew that one day he would reach heights that none of those who looked down on him would ever dream of. He had returned from oblivion, and even if the gods were not on his side, he would not let them block his path. 5 to everyone's surprise, despite the teacher's taunts, Nali did not look the slightest bit embarrassed or confused. On the contrary, he looked confidently into Shinshue's eyes and muttered, Master, are you really sure that a person's innate abilities determine their entire future? You wag your tail at the gifted and humiliate those who are weaker than you. You seem to be uttering great truths here, but in reality you are trying to justify your lowliness. Hearing this, Shinshue trembled with rage. She had never before encountered such open opposition to her will, and moreover, from some disciple, and the fact that Nali openly expressed everything that she was so carefully trying to hide, made her madly angry. Silence! Shinshue shouted. Who are you to lecture the teacher? Nali grinned contemptuously, and aren't you ashamed to call yourself a teacher? I'm sure there are many more commoners in this class than you can imagine, guys who are capable of incredible achievements. Instead of patiently developing their talent, you have trampled on their self-confidence. You are not worthy to be called a teacher. I'm not very good at it, so what of it? One day I will become a legendary demon spellcaster like Lord Yi Mo and marry the most beautiful girl of Lightstar. Saying this, Nali looked at Yi Ziyun with confidence burning in his eyes. For some unknown reason, Yi Ziyun's heart suddenly started beating harder and her cheeks flushed. She hadn't imagined that Nali would dare to state her intentions so obviously in class. No, of course she hadn't fallen in love with him, but she was confused and bewildered. Seeing the embarrassment of his lovely roommate, Shin Yu sulked. Even though he is not his peer Nali, but is always getting in the way. Ha ha ha. Well, that's funny. He's the one with the red vessel of soul, but he's a legendary demon caster like Yi Mo. Mr. Yi Mo, being much younger than you, already had the blue vessel of soul. Do you think that success is determined by luck alone? You're ridiculous. Shin Shui said with a merciless sneer. Instead of being clever, you should have taken your studies seriously. Nali shrugged. I know you despise me now, but one day you will have to take it back. It is not ability that determines the level a person can reach. Use your weakness as a weapon to overpower the stronger and crush heaven itself. We can defy the impossible and go against fate. Nali's words excited the cadets, but they couldn't figure out how this could be put into practice. Even superpowers are useless if you don't have the courage in your soul to make the impossible possible. Nali went on with impetuosity. I, Nali, will challenge fate. Do you want to make a bet with me, Master Shin Shui? Yes, he had failed many times in his past life, but now that he has a second chance, he is going to reach the top in a jiffy. A bet? What are the stakes? Shin Shui smirked mockingly. It's that by the next scoring, in 2 months, I will reach the bronze level. If I fail, I'll quit the academy. But if I succeed, then you will resign. How does that sound? The class gasped in astonishment. How could you offer a teacher such a wager? Of course, everyone wanted Nali to win it, but it was impossible to even imagine. Ha ha ha. Funny. Shin Shui's face distorted with a contemptuous grimace, addressed to the insolent cheeky man. By saying that you can become a bronze rank in 2 months, you actually promise to increase the flow of spiritual power from 5 to 100 units during that time? So do you accept the bet or not? Nali asked, ignoring his teacher's words. It's inconceivable that some upstart could succeed. Shin Shui hissed angrily. No matter who you imagine yourself to be in the future, for now, you are my disciple. For the next 2 months, you won't have to sit around in class. Stand at the back of the classroom. Otherwise, your parents will be notified to expel their son from the Sacred Orchid Military Academy. Showing that he does not care about the punishment, and Shin Shui acted stupidly, Nali stood up from his desk. Well, teacher, your bet is accepted. You might regret it later, and with these words he headed to the far end of the classroom. 11 Me? Regret? You're such a joker. We'll see who's shedding tears later. Shin Shui laughed. Some students from aristocratic families, looking back at Nali standing by the back wall, murmured and laughed. This is a proper place for a legendary demon caster. He, and he must be afraid of being kicked out of the academy. He's not going to make a big deal out of it, is he? 2 months to increase his psychic powers from 5 to 100? Who does he think he is? Mr. Yi Mo himself could not do such a thing in his youth. Shin Shui coldly grinned. This arrogant boy would not go back on his word? So much the better. Of course, it's completely impossible to achieve such results in 2 months. He'd just have to wait until the day he had to walk out in disgrace. Without a word, gritting his teeth, Du Jie stood up from the bench and moved to the far end of the classroom. Since Nali had been punished for speaking on behalf of commoners, his place was by his side. 12 What? You want to stand too? Shin Shui hissed. Then join us, there's enough room for 2. Nali and Du Jie looked at each other and smiled understandingly. It was as if Nali had returned to the past, to where Du Jie had been his best friend. The same Du Jie that Nali remembered him as. After thinking for a while, Lu Piao joined the buddies standing against the wall. What are you doing here? Nali smiled at him. I am sitting on my ass and it's boring, shrugged Lu Piao. Standing is much cooler, isn't it? Haha, come over here. Nali laughed. Lu Piao was always like this. He talked a lot, but he would always hold your hand. He could have just stayed out of it now if it wasn't about him, but he preferred to share his friend's fate. And 3 other boys from ordinary families stood by Nali's side. The noble boy had stood up for them, risking expulsion from the academy, and they felt they had to support him in his time of need. They stood against the wall shoulder to shoulder like brothers, and somehow it didn't feel like punishment anymore. On the contrary, Nali was having an awful lot of fun. Xinshua's face twisted into a wicked grimace when she looked to the back of the classroom, but she had no choice but to continue teaching.